Hey guys, tonight we wake up under a sky that doesn't quite look like the one you know. The stars feel a little too close. The ground's dry, gritty, and smells like brick dust and cumin. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a flute, a note sharp and bright, then a grumble of oxen pulling carts made entirely of wood. You've just opened your eyes in the middle of Babylon, about 3,700 years ago, and no one is around to explain why. The good news, it's morning. The bad news, you're barefoot, slightly sweaty, and lying in a patch of shade beside a canal that smells suspiciously like it's shared by both bathers and butchers. The first thing you feel is heat. Not cruel desert heat just yet, but a simmering warmth like you've been tucked inside a clay oven and forgotten there. You squint up at what looks like a beige sun filtered through a slow-cooking haze. The second thing you feel, danger. Not tigers or arrows, those come later, but social danger. The kind where, if you stand up and walk the wrong way, someone in linen robes might decide you're a thief, or worse, a wandering slave without a master. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere unusual, let me know your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're beside what used to be the Euphrates, but in this era it's more of a living, flowing wall of commerce. On your left, a boy in a reed boat is ferrying jars of fish sauce. On your right, a bearded man squats by the canal, muttering to a clay tablet as he scrapes symbols into it with a sharp reed. His eyes flick to you. He says nothing. You suspect he's calculating your value in sheep. This is Babylon, home to hanging gardens maybe, laws carved in stone, and some of the most ambitious architecture in the ancient world. It's also a place where everyone seems to have a job except you. A passing group of men in kilts of tufted wool glance at you. Their shoulders are sunburnt, their hands caked in mud. One of them carries a basket filled with crushed dates. They mutter in Akkadian, or maybe Sumerian, or maybe a dialect you'll never decipher in time to stop being sold. You try to stand. Your feet sink slightly into warm clay. You wipe your hands on your tunic. Oh wait, you're not wearing one. Just a scrap of something that could generously be called a loincloth. Great, so now your priorities are: find shade. Avoid eye contact with people who own property. Figure out how to not die by lunchtime. The streets here are narrow and lined with clay brick buildings stacked like overconfident Jenga towers. There are no windows at eye level, just small slits high above, keeping the homes cool and the nosy people out. Doors are low. You'd have to crouch to enter, but there are smells escaping: lentils simmered with garlic, fresh-baked barley bread, something suspiciously meaty. One smell, however, overtakes the rest: bitumen. Tar. It's used as mortar, for waterproofing, for rituals. It's also how they mark the official buildings, temples and palaces, and whatever else you shouldn't touch. You duck into a shaded alley. Your skin thanks you immediately. A dog eyes you from beneath a cart, tail thumping, nose twitching. You think about making a friend. You also think the dog might be better fed than you. But you're not entirely helpless. There's something universal about walking like you know where you're going. So you square your shoulders, adjust your loincloth, and stroll toward a large, sun-baked plaza that looks like it could lead somewhere important. This is where you get your first real look at the city. Babylon is loud in a way that's oddly rhythmic: chants from temple courtyards, hammering from smithies, and the splash of laundry being beaten against stones. Pigeons flutter from rooftops like confetti. Every surface seems to have been carefully carved, pressed, or painted with something: religious scenes, numbers, curses against thieves. And in the center of it all is the ziggurat, a towering, layered temple, painted in faded blue and ochre. looming over everything like a stack of divine wedding cakes. At the top, they say, the gods walk. At the bottom, you try not to trip on a pebble and die. A priest in elaborately fringed robes strides past, holding a scepter that looks far too ornamental to be useful. Behind him, a group of acolytes chant and scatter flower petals. You are deeply underdressed for this neighborhood. A woman selling dates calls to you. She looks at your feet, your lack of coin purse, your disoriented expression. Then she waves you off with a laugh and a warning, "Careful, stranger, the city eats the clueless." You smile, nod, and shuffle away, praying that whatever you do next doesn't land you in front of a judge with a very literal interpretation of an eye for an eye. Your best bet: blend in, act like a visitor from a nearby village, and above all, do not ask where the nearest Starbucks is. That might actually get you stoned. You've now survived your first hour in Babylon, which is already better than most time travelers might manage. The next order of business: clothes. Because while the ancient Mesopotamians may be a tolerant people in some regards, they draw a firm line at mysterious person wandering around half-naked, mumbling in a foreign tongue. Currently, your wardrobe consists of one limp strip of linen that could double as a dish towel, and while that may pass in the rural goat-herding outskirts of the empire, in the capital city, it's a ticket to trouble. Babylon is a place where appearances matter a lot. Clothes tell everyone what class you belong to, what god you serve, how much tax you owe, and whether you're likely to keel over from heatstroke before the noon prayers. You duck into a side alley near a market, breathing in the sweetish tang of fermented dates and sun-warmed onions. A merchant selling folded fabrics waves a fan lazily while eyeing a pot of dye that bubbles like soup. He doesn't notice you, which is good. That gives you time to observe the dress code without spending your last imaginary shekel. Let's break it down. For the average male Babylonian, the standard outfit is a knee-length tunic or a wraparound skirt often made of wool or linen, depending on your income level. The style: think toga's more rectangular cousin. These garments are typically belted at the waist with a cord or sash, and the richer folks like to add fringe. Not that lazy tassels on your grandma's curtains kind of fringe. We're talking purposeful, ornate fringe, a kind that says, "Yes, I survived 3 floods and still make time to look fabulous." Women, on the other hand, go for longer gowns that drape elegantly to the ankles, often with one shoulder exposed and the other carefully pinned with a bronze clasp. Jewelry is not optional. If your ears aren't dangling with amulets or your wrists jingling with carved beads, you're considered either in mourning or suspiciously poor. But you have nothing, so you do what any sensible survivor would: you find laundry. You locate a wall where linens are draped to dry and wait for the washer to look the other way. Then, like a polite raccoon, you swipe a slightly damp tunic, sling it over one shoulder, and walk away with the quiet confidence of someone pretending not to be a criminal. It's scratchy, slightly oversized, and smells vaguely of goat milk and optimism, but it fits. You cinch it with a vine cord, and suddenly, you don't look like a time-traveling lunatic. You look like a lower-middle-class barley merchant's apprentice with minor hygiene issues. Now comes the etiquette. In Babylon, it's not just what you wear, it's how you wear it. If your tunic is too neat, people think you're trying too hard, too sloppy, and you'll be mistaken for someone awaiting sentencing. The trick is to wear it like you have somewhere to be, but not urgently. Slow steps. Keep your arms visible. No hiding of hands, that's what thieves do. And try to nod respectfully at people with better sandals. Sandals, by the way, are a luxury. Most folks walk barefoot, which means your lack of shoes doesn't mark you as an alien, just as someone who can't afford leather. That's a blessing, really. If you'd shown up in sneakers, the locals would have either made you a god or burned you as a witch. As you walk through the market again, you notice the shift in glances. People don't avoid you anymore. They still don't greet you, but that's progress. A child offers you a fig. You take it with a smile and mutter something that sounds vaguely like shukran, hoping it passes. The fig is warm from the sun, sticky sweet, and filled with seeds that pop like grit. But it's the first thing you've eaten since arriving in this brick and bitumen world, and it makes everything feel just a touch more real. You duck under a woven awning and watch a pair of scribes arguing over a delivery of scrolls. One of them gestures angrily at the other's tunic, fringe uneven. You make a mental note. Apparently, asymmetrical fringe is offensive to some bureaucrats. A merchant nearby is demonstrating how to tie a sash in 3 different ways, each indicating a different caste. One for temple servants, one for military scribes, and one for low-level accountants. You practice the knot when no one's watching, settling on aspiring melon seller as your temporary identity. Historians still argue whether these dress codes were formal laws or just enforced through social pressure. What's clear is that the Babylonians cared deeply about symbols. Your belt, your beard, even the way your garment flared when you moved could signal your loyalties. And beards. Oh, the beards. Men here take them seriously. Braided, oiled, shaped like waves or zigzags. If you can't grow one, fake it. If you can grow one, keep it tidy. You touch your chin. Not enough time has passed since your accidental time hop to cultivate anything respectable. You'll have to claim some kind of youthful exemption. Maybe say you're still in training to be a priest, or a singer, or a junior astrologer who stares at the moon and mumbles in tongues. You pass a reflective bronze basin in a vendor's stall. You barely recognize yourself, sun-reddened, hair askew, eyes wide with ancient dust. But with your newly acquired tunic and makeshift belt, you look plausible. Not exactly like someone born here, but close enough that no one's reaching for rope or temple guards. A group of young men swagger past in embroidered kilts, laughing about something involving a stolen goat and a priest's daughter. You avoid their eyes. Your journey's only just begun, and the less you interact with goats and priests, the better. So here you are, clothed, relatively unnoticed, and officially dressed well enough to be ignored. That's a victory in any era. You're dressed upright and vaguely blending in. So now you do what any reasonable person would do when dropped into one of the world's oldest cities with zero context. You try not to offend the gods. This is harder than it sounds. In Babylon, the gods are everywhere, painted on walls, perched on rooftops, lurking in shadows and very possibly eavesdropping on your every thought. They don't just live in temples. They live in the very idea of the city. The bricks are laid in their honor. The river flows by their command. Even your borrowed tunic might bear a stitched blessing or curse, depending on how closely you inspected it. Your first run-in with divine protocol comes just before noon. You've wandered toward the edge of a plaza where people are setting down bowls of dates, barley cakes, and oddly raw onions. An old woman is humming. A boy sprinkles beer over a low altar. You freeze. This is not a picnic. This is an offering. In Babylonian religion, forgetting to bow, touch your heart, or utter the right invocation before passing a shrine is roughly equivalent to insulting someone's mother, grandmother, and household deity all at once. It's not immediately fatal, but it's unwise, and the consequences, while rarely involving fire from the sky, often involve fines, curses, or mysterious rashes. You try to look reverent. You pause, clasp your hands together, and nod solemnly at the altar. Someone nearby murmurs an approval. You've passed your first test. The gods here are numerous. Marduk is the big one, the city's patron and a fan of law, order, and extremely detailed contracts. Then there's Ishtar, goddess of love and war, and frequently both at the same time, who may reward you with fortune or pelt your house with heartbreak. Enlil, Shamash, Nergal, Ea, the list goes on. Each deity has their quirks, moods, and preferred days of the week. There's even a whole section of the temple staff whose sole job is to interpret which god you've offended based on which part of your face is twitching. As you step carefully through the plaza, a procession approaches. A group of robed figures walks slowly behind a statue of Marduk on a wheeled cart. It's painted gold, with wide staring eyes and a stern frown that suggests he's unimpressed by your borrowed belt. Everyone kneels. You kneel too, trying not to look like you're Googling how to kneel in Babylon with your brain. A priest rings a bell. The crowd bows their heads. You follow suit, resisting the urge to peek. Here's the trick with gods in Babylon. They don't just want obedience. They want performance. Festivals, sacrifices, poems, rituals, their affection is theatrical, and the city has woven this performance into daily life. Water is poured out before meals for the gods. Doors are knocked on thrice before entering, just in case a spirit is hanging out on the threshold. Some households keep tiny statues of deities in special wall niches. Others have protective amulets shaped like fish, stars, or odd geometric symbols. One family might invoke Ishtar for love, while their neighbor asks Nergal for protection during fever season. It's a divine arms race, and the rules are fluid. Historians still argue whether the common Babylonian genuinely believed the gods intervened in daily life or simply followed the rituals out of cultural habit. The truth is probably both. In a city where floods, famines, and invasions were seasonal features, it made sense to keep the gods on your good side. Your problem: you don't know the rituals. You don't know which god is symbolized by the pinecone-shaped charm dangling from the baker's stall. You definitely don't know what it means when the wind shifts during a sacrifice and blows incense into your face, probably bad. And then your first mistake. You see a dog, a friendly one, mangy, tail wagging, curious. It trots up and sniffs your hand. You scratch behind its ear. A few people gasp. One woman backs away. You realize too late that you've just pet a sacred animal. Dogs were often connected to Gula, the goddess of healing, and while the modern instinct to coo at every tail wagger runs deep, here it's a potential faux pas. You step back, bow deeply to the animal, and mutter something about divine favor. Someone snorts. You're not sure if it's amusement or offense, possibly both. You retreat into the shade of a shrine, a small arched alcove with a basin for offerings. It's cool inside, smelling of burnt myrrh and wet stone. A young acolyte sits nearby, drawing constellations in a tray of ash. He looks up at you, squints, and says, "Which temple are you from?" You panic, then you say, Ishtar, peripheral outpost." He nods, unconvinced but uninterested. You missed the sunrise chant. "Divine dream work assignment," you bluff. He shrugs, "It's not my karma." You sit beside him. For a moment the air is peaceful. Incense wafts up in slow spirals. Somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds, either a call to prayer or a warning about a roaming bull. You don't ask. As the afternoon heat settles in like a blanket, you realize just how central the gods are to survival here. Not just spiritually, but socially. If you don't participate in rituals, people notice. If you offend the wrong deity, people avoid you. If you're perceived as cursed, you might not get invited to share barley beer. And trust me, in this city, barley beer is half your hydration plan. So you decide, better safe than smitten. From now on, you'll bow at doorways, murmur vague blessings to half-remembered gods, and never, ever touch a statue, no matter how dusty or underwhelming it looks. You've passed the first divine checkpoint. There will be others. For now, you are alive, modestly reverent, and still not a pillar of salt. You're alive, you're clothed, You've paid your respects to the gods, sort of, and you haven't yet been sacrificed or recruited into the priesthood. Progress. Now, let's talk water. Because if you plan to survive more than a day in Babylon, you'll need to figure out how to drink without acquiring a divine parasite or being chased off someone's irrigation trench. Babylon is a city of canals. Imagine Venice, but with fewer gondolas and more goats. The Euphrates slices through the heart of the city, and from it, a web of channels feeds neighborhoods, gardens, bathhouses, and, regrettably, latrines. The water looks still and sun-kissed, but don't be fooled. It carries the sins of the city in slow-moving waves. Laundry, leftovers, ceremonial wine, and the occasional curse tablet all float downstream like a parade of ancient biohazards. You're thirsty. You've been wandering under the Mesopotamian sun, which hits the back of your neck like a judgmental frying pan. The fig you ate earlier only made things worse. Your mouth feels like it's lined with clay dust. You need water, desperately. But here's the catch. Not all water is equal. The average Babylonian doesn't drink straight from the canal unless they're feeling lucky or too poor to care. Instead, they rely on a few safer sources. Wells, these are public or private and dug deep, often lined with bricks or stone. The water is cooler, sometimes filtered through layers of sand and gravel. If you see people drawing water with ropes and clay jars, follow them. Jars in shady courtyards. Many households leave tall storage jars open to the air in shaded spots, letting the water settle and cool. Some even add herbs or flowers to mask any earthy flavors. Beer. Yes, really. Fermented barley beer, often cloudy and mildly sour, is a staple of hydration. It's low in alcohol, high in calories, and surprisingly clean thanks to the boiling process during brewing. Sacred springs and temple fountains, these are for ritual use and often heavily guarded. Trying to take a sip here is not recommended unless you want to be invited to a purification ceremony that involves ash, goat's blood, and probably crying. You manage to track down a small well tucked behind a market stall. It's surrounded by women balancing jars on their hips and children fighting over whose turn it is to crank the pulley. You wait your turn, trying to look like someone who belongs to a household, not someone who appeared from thin air. When your chance comes, you lower a cracked clay bucket into the dark cylinder, hear the splash, and draw it back up hand over hand. The rope burns your palms. The bucket rises, dripping with cool water. You sip. It's earthy, a little metallic, but it's not floating with dead bees and it doesn't taste like canal broth, so you call that a win. As you drink, an elderly woman eyes you and mutters something that sounds like a question. You respond with a neutral grunt and a half bow. She frowns, then nods. Apparently, that was the correct answer. You lean against the wall and try to remember how modern plumbing works. Then you stop because that kind of thinking only makes things harder. Here, water is fetched, hauled, stored, rationed. Every sip is a small victory. Nearby, a man is boiling water in a bronze pot over a charcoal fire. He adds mint and something that might be licorice root. He sees you watching and offers a cup. You take it. It's warm and slightly sweet, and the herbs mask the mineral tang. You thank him with a nod. He gestures toward a nearby shrine and says a single word, Gula. You realize it's another offering. You've just drunk a healing draught, likely left out to honor the goddess of medicine. You bow again, deeper this time. Historians still debate how much the average Babylonian knew about disease transmission. They didn't know about bacteria, sure, but they knew some water made you sick, and some water didn't. They didn't have the germ theory, but they had observation, rituals, and habits that nudged them toward hygiene. And they had beer, lots of beer. It wasn't just a drink, it was a food. Brewed from barely mashed grains, unfiltered, and slurped through straws to avoid the floating sediment, It was consumed by everyone from laborers to priests. A household might brew a week's worth at a time and store it in huge jugs sealed with mud caps. As the afternoon stretches into a haze of heat and dust, you're led by your nose to a beer stand near a shaded square. A woman stirs a vat with a paddle the size of a shovel. She scoops a cupful, blows off the foam, and hands it to you. No coins are exchanged, just a nod toward a basket of dates, a barter system. You hand over a date from your earlier snack. The woman smiles. You sip. It's sour, thick, faintly nutty, a little grainy, but it cools your mouth and makes your shoulders loosen. The drink isn't just hydration, it's integration. It tells the people around you, I'm not an outsider. I drink like you. I pay like you. I'm not a temple thief or a wandering spirit. I'm one of you. You sit on a stone step, beer in hand, and feel for the first time like you might just make it here. You're still thirsty, still sunburned, and still barely fluent in anything beyond smiles and shrugs. But you have water, you have beer, you have a borrowed tunic and a plausible backstory. You even have a plan. Stick close to the wells, avoid the sacred fountains, drink only what bubbles or steams, and if anyone asks who taught you the art of hydration, you say, my grandmother, and leave it at that. You'll live to see another sunset. It's been a full day now, by Babylonian standards, and while your survival instincts have been admirable, your stomach is beginning to make sounds that could summon minor spirits. Time to eat. Unfortunately, this is ancient Mesopotamia. There are no food trucks. There is no lunch menu. There's just you, a market full of unfamiliar smells, and a growing suspicion that every dish comes with an unexpected surprise. You wander toward the central bazaar, a bustling patchwork of open-air stalls, clay ovens, and people arguing over the cost of cucumbers like their lives depend on it. It's loud, fragrant, chaotic, exactly the kind of place where you're likely to eat something either divine or deeply regrettable. The good news: Babylonian food is surprisingly good. The bad news: the menu is unwritten, the ingredients are unlabeled, and you're one poorly timed compliment away from offending someone's grandmother's recipe. Let's start with what's on offer. Babylonians loved barley. Barley bread, barley porridge, barley beer. If it can be boiled, mashed, or fermented, they've tried it. Then there's emmer wheat, another grain that makes decent flatbread if you don't mind a texture that could be described as ambitiously rustic. You spot a baker pulling thin, oval-shaped loaves from a beehive oven. The air is warm and rich with the scent of roasted grain and charcoal. You approach slowly, hand outstretched. He eyes your tunic, your sandals non-existent, and your face, which by now looks like someone's dusty cousin. He tears off a chunk and hands it to you. You bow in thanks, nibbling carefully. The bread is dry, crumbly, and just a little sour, but it's real food, and crucially, it's not alive. Then you find a stall with clay bowls of stew. The vendor gestures grandly toward each. Lentils with onions, chickpeas with leeks, a mysterious meat and date combination that looks like it might bite back. You point at the chickpeas. He ladles out a scoop, adds a drizzle of what smells like sesame oil, and tears off a bit of bread as a spoon. You eat with your hands as expected. It's delicious, earthy, tangy, rich with the kind of flavors that come from letting something simmer until the clay pot threatens to melt. And here's the thing. Ancient Babylonian cuisine is not bland. They used spices: coriander, cumin, garlic, mint, mustard seed, even the occasional imported cinnamon or cardamom, if the merchant gods were smiling. A clay tablet from this era even contains a few of the world's oldest recipes. Historians still argue whether one cryptic entry refers to stew with blood and sour milk or goat in vinegar and pomegranate. Either way, it was seasoned. You finish your stew and realize something vital. No one's chased you off yet. That means you're passing, at least for now. That's when you almost ruin it. You notice a small table with neatly arranged cakes, little discs of flour, honey, and dried fruit. They're tempting. You reach out, but a sharp hiss from the vendor stops you. She barks something, and an older man pulls you aside. "That's for Marduk," he says. "You try to eat that, you better be ready to offer your kidneys in trade." You nod, chastened. The cakes were part of an offering, one of the many edible gifts left for deities on holy days. Some gods liked fruit, others meat. Some preferred bread shaped like animals. Some were picky about salt. From now on, your rule is simple. If it's neatly arranged and no one's touching it, walk away. Feeling emboldened, you explore further and spot what looks like a tiny grill. A woman fans the flames while skewering bits of meat, lamb, possibly goat. She sells you one in exchange for a shiny seashell you didn't even know was in your pocket. Don't ask. Babylon has ways. The meat is smoky, juicy, and dripping with fat. It's so good you forget where or when you are. Beside you, a group of laborers laughs over shared bowls of stew and a jug of beer. One of them offers you a sip. You take it. The beer is warm and thick but oddly comforting. You nod your thanks, and someone claps you on the back. It's a simple ritual: eat, drink, share, survive. But food here isn't just sustenance, it's identity. The rich eat differently. Their bread is whiter, their stews contain rare spices, their meat is tenderized and cooked with wine. The poor make do with leftovers, porridge, and whatever they can forage from neglected gardens. Street vendors often serve the middle, feeding scribes, builders, and wandering time travelers with decent stew at a fair price. And yet, across the city, one thing unites them all: feasting. On holy days, during weddings, after funerals, the Babylonians throw down. Whole sheep are roasted, vats of grain boiled, vats of beer drained. It's loud, smoky, celebratory, and sometimes slightly terrifying. You don't get invited unless you bring something to offer, or unless you've saved someone's goat. For now, though, you're full. The bread, stew, and meat have settled in your stomach like old friends. The sun's still hot, but you no longer feel fragile, just slightly charred. You find a shady wall and sit, digesting both your food and your triumph. You've eaten your first Babylonian meal without being poisoned, cursed, or publicly shamed. That's no small feat. So here's your takeaway. Stick to stews. Don't touch symmetrical pastries. Always smell the water, and when in doubt, trade a seashell. The sun is leaning westward now, casting long shadows across the baked brick streets. You've eaten, hydrated, and narrowly avoided divine retribution multiple times. Not bad, but just as you start to feel a touch of pride, reality strikes. You have no job. In Babylon, being unemployed isn't just awkward, it's dangerous. Everyone belongs somewhere. If you're not working, you're a vagrant. If you're a vagrant, you're suspicious. And if you're suspicious, well, let's just say Babylon has a robust and creatively cruel judicial system. So you need a trade. Something simple, plausible, and ideally low on physical exertion and divine expectation. You start by walking, slowly, through a work district where the air buzzes with hammering, shouting, and the distant rhythmic thump of someone flattening copper. Here's what you see. A man chiseling stone with mathematical precision, stopping every few minutes to squint at a wax tablet covered in calculations. Architect, surveyor, either way, not a job you can fake. A group of women weaving reeds into baskets with terrifying speed. You watch for 5 minutes and still can't figure out how they don't tangle the entire thing. Also, not your future. A boy delivering messages, ducking under carts, dodging animals, and sprinting down alleys like his life depends on it. It might. Messengers are fast, wiry, and half-wizard with directions. You, not so much. Then you see them, the scribes. They sit in the shade of a colonnade, hunched over wooden boards or soft clay tablets, etching symbols with a reed stylus. Calm, quiet. No heavy lifting, no angry goats, just squiggles, murmured prayers, and the occasional dispute over grammar. You've found your target. Babylonian scribes are the gatekeepers of civilization. They write contracts, copy hymns, log taxes, curse enemies, and bless marriages. They're respected, educated, and, most importantly, indoors. But there's a catch. You don't know cuneiform, not a single wedge. So your only chance is to fake it, or rather, fake being in training. You sidle up to the youngest scribe you can find, somewhere between teenager and very old 12-year-old, and sit nearby, watching intently. He ignores you. You clear your throat. Still nothing. Finally, you say the magic phrase, "Apprentice from Sapar, transferred, paperwork, lost." He blinks. "What's your last assigned tablet?" You panic. "Temple inventories, statues, many goats." He seems unconvinced, but not hostile. He grunts, gestures toward a slab of clay, and tosses you a reed. It's chipped. You hold it awkwardly, scratch a line into the clay, and pray that it looks official. It does not. It looks like a dying spider attempted cursive. But the boy just smirks. "Beginner, you need softer clay." You exhale. You're in. And now you learn, fast. Cuneiform is not for the faint of wrist. Each mark must be pressed, angled, and spaced just right. Misplace a wedge and you could accidentally sign someone up for temple duty instead of delivering barley. Still, you practice, you copy shapes. You nod along when the boy says things like, "That one means grain debt incurred under moonwatch," or "Don't write that near a priest unless you enjoy vomiting frogs." You're taught how to knead clay until it's firm but pliable. Carve lines with your reed stylus without poking through. Read basic signs for common nouns: bread, beer, sheep, gods, curses, kings. Historians still debate how literate the general Babylonian population was. Some suggest scribes held near monopoly on reading and writing, while others argue basic literacy was more widespread, especially among traders. Either way, being a scribe or pretending to be one is a solid bet for survival. By afternoon's end, you've etched your name, your real one, just for yourself, into a palm-sized tablet. It dries slowly in the sun, curling slightly at the edges. You hold it like a medal. A man in a long robe with a clipped beard walks past and glances at your tablet. He snorts. "Scribes these days," he mutters, and moves on. You beam. You've found your niche. You're not just hiding, you're apprenticing. You have purpose, shade, and a legitimate reason to sit quietly in public without being questioned. You also overhear things. Scribes know everything: grain prices, upcoming festivals, which temple's short on incense, who's secretly marrying whom, and which judge hates onions. You jot mental notes. Knowledge here is as good as currency. As dusk settles and the scribes begin packing up their tablets into straw-lined baskets, your young mentor turns to you. "Same time tomorrow," he says, not unkindly. You nod. You'll be back, you'll improve, and maybe someday soon you'll graduate from fake scribe to actual scribe, at least enough to sign your own goat contracts. You walk home, or rather, toward whatever shaded spot you'll pretend is home tonight, feeling something new, a thread of belonging. You don't have a family, a house, or even a real job title, but you have a stylus. You have a story, and in Babylon, that's the beginning of everything. As the first stars appear, small, precise pinpricks in a velvet sky, you begin to feel the strain of the day in your bones. You've survived hunger, heat, and the hazards of ill-timed compliments to sacred pastries. But now, as night settles over Babylon like a warm, noisy blanket, a new question rises from your exhausted limbs and grumbling intestines. Where exactly are you supposed to relieve yourself? Yes, it's not glamorous, but you've been in this world long enough now to know that ignoring bodily functions in ancient cities can have consequences, social, physical, and possibly divine. You begin your search in the obvious place, The outer edge of the market, where food waste, broken pots, and wilted herbs pile up like offerings to the god of compost. Surely, somewhere nearby there must be a latrine. But Babylon is not Rome. It doesn't boast marble-seated communal bathrooms with running water and philosophizing senators. It boasts other methods. First, the public options, if you can call them that. You notice an alley that smells like equal parts roasted garlic and shame. A young boy walks in, squats behind a wall, and emerges moments later, completely unbothered. You investigate, discreetly, and discover what appears to be a pit, carefully dug and bricked around with a bit of straw tossed over it. Ingenious, disgusting, functional. Nearby, a clay jar sits beside the wall. You assume it's for rinsing. You assume this mostly because you really want it to be for rinsing. In some parts of the city, wealthier neighborhoods have rudimentary facilities, latrine pits lined with baked bricks, connected to small drainage channels that lead eventually into larger runoff systems that snake toward the canal. These toilets are often shared between multiple households, and if you're lucky, cleaned regularly by some poor soul whose job title likely involves the word handler. Your second option, the rooftops. Many Babylonian homes are built with flat, accessible rooftops where families sleep during the hotter months. Some even keep small jars or pots up there, ancient chamber pots, which are later emptied discreetly into canals or compost heaps. You pass one home just in time to see someone tossing something suspiciously splashy over the edge. You step back quickly. You're learning. Then there's the third option, temples. Some of them, particularly those tied to healing deities, include areas designed for bodily cleansing. But these are reserved for purification rites, not daily needs. Trying to use a sacred fountain as a personal washroom is the quickest way to get yourself exorcised with cold ashes and a very judgmental priest. You retreat back toward the scribe district and find a corner shaded by woven mats. A man steps out, adjusting his belt. He sees you watching and raises an eyebrow. "Too much beer?" he asks. You nod sheepishly. He gestures. "Just don't use the left pit. Someone sacrificed a pigeon in it." You step in cautiously. The pit is shallow, brick-lined, and surprisingly well ventilated. There's a pile of ashes nearby, likely used as a deodorizer. A handful of broken reeds rest in a pot of cloudy water. You remember reading somewhere that ancient people used reeds for, shall we say, post-process hygiene. It's a sharp reminder of how far modern plumbing has come and how resourceful people have always been. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians had a formal sewage system. Some believe the city had rudimentary storm drains and carefully designed runoff ditches, but there's little evidence of centralized sanitation like Rome or Mohenjo-Daro. What's clear, though, is that they were not clueless. Ashes, brickwork, and spatial separation of waste areas show a practical, if not particularly glamorous, approach to hygiene. You emerge from the corner feeling relieved, humbler, and much more appreciative of every bathroom you've ever taken for granted. You wash your hands with sand and a splash of water from a nearby jar. It's not ideal, but it's enough. As you make your way back toward your sleeping spot, a shaded overhang between two temple storehouses, you can't help but notice how the city shifts at night. It's quieter, yes, but also softer. Voices murmur instead of shout. The stars reflect off the canal in shimmering ribbons. Somewhere, a flute plays a slow, lilting tune that makes the whole city feel like it's sighing. You settle down, wrap your tunic tighter against the breeze, and breathe in the night air rich with incense, clay, and the faint, persistent tang of fermented grain. You've done something remarkable today. You've survived Babylon's most unspoken challenge, the search for a toilet, and in doing so, you've learned something vital. Civilization isn't just laws and gods and grain storage. It's knowing where to go, when to go, and how to not make it someone else's problem. You wake before dawn, if you can call it waking. The heat didn't leave overnight, it just curled into the cracks, waiting. Your makeshift bed of woven reeds and hope did little to cushion you from the unforgiving brick floor, and your neck feels like it's been used in a game involving blunt instruments. But no matter, you're alive. The stars are fading, the horizon's turning that odd bruised shade of lavender that means the sun is about to broil your face again. Time to face the Babylonian weather. The thing they don't tell you about ancient Mesopotamia is that it's not just hot, it's cleverly hot. The city seems to radiate its own internal furnace. It's as though someone took a kiln, stretched it into the shape of a capital, and declared, "This seems fine." You try to move slowly. That's the first rule. Conserve your sweat. Everything here is designed around the heat. Homes are built with narrow windows placed high to limit sunlight and invite air. Walls are thick, clay-bricked, and sun-baked to hold in coolness, assuming, of course, you ever get cool to begin with. You wipe your brow with the edge of your tunic and feel grit. The sweat mixes with dust, forming a thin layer of what you will later think of as Babylonian frosting. It's unpleasant, but it helps block the sun, or so you tell yourself. What's amazing, though, is how the locals manage it. Babylonian daily life starts early, painfully early. Long before the sun really starts to punish the streets, people are already out, fetching water, starting ovens, exchanging gossip over barley cakes. Work happens in bursts, bracketed by the shadows. By mid-morning, you see people begin to vanish. Doors close, markets quiet down. It's not a nap, naps imply comfort, it's more like tactical retreat. A midday Babylonian street is a ghost town wrapped in saffron-colored light. Only the desperate or foolish walk then. Which brings us to clothing. You, like most commoners, are wearing a basic linen tunic, lightweight, breathable, and only slightly itchy in the wrong places. The richer citizens, however, dress in layers, and counterintuitively, they seem less sweaty. Why? Because the outer garments act like thermal shields. Think ancient desert astronauts. One man walks past you in a layered robe fringed with gold thread. He's glowing. Literally, you blink through the haze and vow to find better fabric. Meanwhile, headwear is crucial. Many wear simple head wraps or scarves to shield from the sun. Some sport reed hats, flat and wide-brimmed, that look half ridiculous and half genius. You try fashioning one from a discarded mat. It works poorly, but it keeps your scalp from burning off. Then there's smell, and this, you realize, is where things get tricky. Between the heat, the animals, and the sheer number of sweaty bodies moving through narrow clay corridors, the air is rich. Not necessarily foul, but dense, like someone cooked onions in goat butter and sprayed it on every brick. Yet Babylonians don't seem offended by it. In fact, they seem to manage it deliberately. Incense burns in corners, especially myrrh and frankincense, which double as offerings and deodorant. People carry bundles of herbs, mint, juniper, cedar chips tucked into their sashes. You watch one woman toss a handful of crushed thyme into her bath water. You smell better just standing near her. You, meanwhile, smell like regret and smoked barley. You need a bath. Fortunately, the Babylonians were unusually tidy for their time. Most homes had some form of bathing area, buckets, basins, or access to a small canal outlet for quick washes. Communal bathhouses also exist, though they're often more about socializing than hygiene. You find one near the edge of the craftsman quarter, a courtyard with a series of stone basins, an old man guarding a stack of linen towels, and several buckets of tepid water. You wait your turn, nod politely, and scrub down as best you can using sand and a fibrous reed sponge. It's not exactly a spa experience, but after days of caked-on sweat and the faint odor of divine panic, it's heaven. you emerge cleaner, lighter, and slightly dizzy from the sudden drop in body temperature. Historians still argue whether these bathing practices were ritualistic, medicinal, or just plain practical. The answer, of course, is all three. Cleanliness here isn't just comfort, it's spiritual alignment. Being dirty offends the gods. So does not anointing yourself with oil, but oils are expensive and currently not in your budget. You air dry in the shade, your tunic damp but clinging less aggressively. You feel human again. That feeling lasts approximately 11 minutes, or until you step back into the street and the sun slaps you across the face like a scandalized ant. The air is thick again, shimmering above the bricks, buzzing faintly with the sound of cicadas and curses. You retreat into a shadowed corner and accept your new reality. Babylon is not built for comfort. It's built for adaptation. You don't fight the heat, you bend around it. So, new survival rules. Start early. Walk slow. Stay shaded. Bathe when you can. Burn herbs. Never underestimate the power of a linen headwrap. As night approaches again, you lie on your back under a reed awning, watching the sky dim to a dull bronze. You've survived another full cycle of the Babylonian day, with its heat, its smells, and its tricksy sunlight. And while you're still underdressed and underpaid, you're beginning to understand how people lived in a furnace wrapped in ritual. And somehow, it's kind of beautiful. By now, you've managed to avoid starvation, dehydration, heat stroke, divine smiting, and a poorly aimed goat cart. Not bad, but there's one more daily hazard that could undo all your hard-earned credibility in an instant: saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. Babylon is a city of words. The people here write them, chant them, barter with them, and perhaps most dangerously misinterpret them. So as you weave through the sun-softened alleys, past painted shutters and incense-scented doorways, it becomes clear: your mouth is a liability. Your first encounter of the day is with a man selling amulets, tiny clay discs etched with symbols, strung onto cords of hair or reed. Protection from curses, he declares. Discount for the divinely confused. You chuckle, reflexively muttering, "Thanks, but I'm good." The man narrows his eyes. He heard good as God, and now he thinks you just denied the influence of divine forces. A few passers-by raise their brows. One woman crosses herself Babylon style by tapping her shoulder, heart, and forehead with 2 fingers. You smile awkwardly and give a thumbs up. Mistake. Thumbs don't mean okay here. They mean shove this, if you catch my drift. You hustle away. Here's what you learn quickly. Babylonian communication relies heavily on body language, tone, and an unspoken set of rules that you're absolutely breaking every time you breathe. So let's set some ground rules. Do. Greet people with a nod or hand-to-heart gesture. Lower your eyes slightly when speaking to someone older or more bejeweled than you. Smile modestly, not broadly. Too many teeth implies you're either dangerous or drunk. Speak slowly, clearly, and avoid long pauses. They're associated with forgetting ritual phrases. Don't touch anyone unless invited. This includes friendly slaps, fist bumps, and especially pointing. Raise your voice during negotiations. That's a sign of spiritual imbalance. Refer to anything as yours, unless it legally is. Ownership is sacred here. Use sarcasm. There is no ancient Sumerian word for just kidding. You try a few safe phrases you've picked up. Peace to your house. May the gods multiply your bread. My goat is very tired. Okay, maybe not the last one, but it gets a laugh from the bricklayer you're walking beside, and that's something. Later, you accidentally bump into a woman carrying a basket of chickpeas. She drops it. You help her gather them, bow twice, and mumble something about Shamash's blessings. She stares at you for a beat too long, then offers you a single pea as thanks. You accept with a bow and back away like someone defusing a bomb made of etiquette. It's not all bad. Some people are kind. They recognize your awkwardness as foreignness, not rudeness. They assume you're from the hinterlands, somewhere dusty and illiterate, which, ironically, buys you a bit of grace. Still, there are tricky types. You see them lounging near temples and city gates, twirling knives or amber beads, looking for arguments or excuses. One man sidles up beside you and mutters something under his breath. You pretend not to hear. He repeats it louder. You nod, say blessings upon your ancestors, and keep walking. He scowls but doesn't follow. You made a lucky guess. Ancestor respect is a universal bomb. Historians still argue how multilingual Babylon really was. Akkadian was the dominant tongue, but Sumerian was still taught for ceremonies. Traders brought in scraps of Egyptian, Elamite, Hittite, and more. Gestures became essential, a kind of hand-dance dialect everyone used when vocabulary failed. You start developing your own. A double nod for, "I'm harmless." A hand over heart for, "Thank you, please don't curse me." A two-finger wave for, "I have absolutely no idea what's happening." By dusk, you feel a little more fluent in silence. You've learned to read expressions, listen for tone shifts, and spot when someone's about to pitch you a cursed necklace. You haven't been challenged to a duel or married off by accident, so that's progress. As the sun sinks and the market begins its sleepy retreat, you find a corner to rest. A group of young musicians practices a slow, plucky tune on lyres and drums. You tap your foot in time, then stop when you notice the tempo has changed on purpose just to throw you off. You laugh quietly. Language isn't just about words here. It's about rhythm, posture, shared reference points, and a certain blend of caution and bravado. Tonight, as you fall asleep beneath a wall painted with protective glyphs, you whisper to yourself a single phrase in awkward Akkadian, "May the gods overlook my grammar." And if they do, you just might survive another day. There's a knocking sound this morning. Not the kind that demands attention, more the kind that quietly implies paperwork, rules, and someone with sandals too clean to trust. You wake slowly, neck creaked sideways against a stone wall. The shade hasn't vanished yet, but the heat is already unfurling like a cobra. In front of you, two scribes walk past in serious conversation, their clay tablets tucked under arms like precious relics. One of them is muttering names, the other numbers, tallies, something that smells like bureaucracy. That's when it hits you. You don't officially exist. No records. No family, no tax registration, temple affiliation, or trade guild membership. You are, to Babylonian society, a ghost in a tunic, and while that was fine when you were just another sweaty face in the crowd, it becomes a problem the moment someone asks your name, your real name, and which household you belong to. Because Babylon is obsessed with records. This isn't a loose village where people drift in and out unnoticed. This is a city that writes everything down. Births, deaths, debt, goat transfers, complaints about neighborly fig trees, mysterious omens, and yes, even your breath if you owe someone barley. You ask your young scribe friend, a boy who now trusts you enough to throw clay pellets at your head while muttering grammar lessons. "How does someone register here?" you ask, casually. He raises an eyebrow. "You mean officially?" You nod. "Well," he says, "you need a name, a father's name, a profession, a residence, and a witness." You smile as if this is all very helpful. Inside, you panic. You have none of those things. First, the name. You can't use your real one. It's too strange, too modern, too vowel-heavy. You need something local. Something that says, "I once herded barley in a thunderstorm." You settle on Nab Nasir, which roughly means nab, protects. Nab is the god of scribes, and it doesn't hurt to butter up the divine HR department. Next, father's name. You invent one. Idn SN sounds nice, vaguely pious. The SN part invokes the moon god, and moon gods rarely get mad about paperwork. Profession. You gesture vaguely toward your borrowed stylus and say, junior scribe in training. It's not a lie. It's more of an aspirational technicality. Residence. You name the quarter where you've been sleeping. The locals call it the Eastgate Whisper. Romantic if you ignore the rats. Now the hard part, a witness. You ask around. Most people blink and walk away. One man, clearly drunk on date wine, says, I'll vouch for you if you give me your sandals. You don't have sandals. Deal off. Finally, an old woman from the bread market nods slowly. You gave my grandson a fig yesterday, she says. You're odd, but not cursed. It's the closest thing to affection you've felt all week. She agrees to stand with you in front of the registrar. This is an elderly man with a square beard, sitting behind a desk that's actually just a large, flat-topped urn. He holds a stylus like a weapon. His assistant rolls out a damp clay tablet and begins carving your answers. Name, Nab Nasir. Father's name, Idn SN. Profession, apprentice scribe. Quarter, Eastgate Whisper. Witness, the fig eater's favor, as she puts it. You get a sideways glance for that one. The assistant finishes the tablet and holds it up like a newborn child. He's legal, he says. The registrar grunts, adds his own mark, and drops a dab of wax over one corner. That's it. You now exist. It's hard to describe the feeling. You're still a time-traveling fraud with no clue how long you'll be stuck here. But now, in the eyes of Babylonian law and its many angry gods, you're someone. You can rent tools. You can barter honestly. You might even be able to join a temple feast without getting tackled by a linen-cloaked bouncer. Historians still marvel at how bureaucratic Mesopotamia was. Whole archives have survived thousands of tablets outlining who owed whom how many sheep, when a wall was built, or why a shipment of garlic never made it to Uruk. They even had census tablets, little clay biographies for every taxable body. And now you're one of those bodies. With your new identity, you feel braver. You walk differently, more upright. You nod confidently to a passing guard who squints, then lets you pass without comment. That's real power here, not riches, not weapons, not even divine favor. It's being on the tablet. As you walk back toward your usual haunts, a boy calls out your name, not your real one, your Babylonian one. And for the first time since you landed in this dusty miracle of a city, you turn and answer. Yes, you say, and it's true. The man is shouting, loudly, dramatically, with the kind of lung power normally reserved for incantations and angry prophets, and he's holding a sheep by the ear. You watch from a safe distance, crouched behind a stack of baskets as two men argue in front of a dusty crowd. The sheep, to its credit, looks unfazed. This is your first real look at the Babylonian justice system, not as a bystander to a polite contract dispute, but as a live witness to a grievance explosion. The yelling man claims the sheep was switched. The accused, arms crossed and robes askew, insists he was sold that sheep fair and square by a third man who has, inconveniently, vanished. A scribe nearby furiously presses symbols into clay. Two guards stand by, not intervening yet, but eyeing everyone like they've seen this play out 100 times. You've heard of the Code of Hammurabi, of course. It's legendary. The E for an eye law. Tall, black stone, serious chin on the king. But what you didn't realize is how alive it is, how often it's quoted, referenced, and adjusted by people who clearly remember what happened last time someone touched someone else's ox.cc. You inch closer. The crowd mutters legal advice, like a sports audience. Article 266, He must return the sheep and compensate. It's 245, you idiot. Unless he has a witness, then it's fine. Someone check if the sheep has a branding scar. Babylonian law isn't casual. It's carved, literally. The code, first inscribed around 1754 BCE by King Hammurabi, spells out hundreds of rules. Prices, penalties, inheritance, wages, marriage rights, and yes, how to deal with sheep-related deception. You back away slowly. Getting involved would mean being questioned, possibly cursed, and definitely asked for paperwork. And though you now technically exist as Nab, Nasir, junior scribe of the Eastgate Whisper Quarter, you'd prefer not to test that identity in front of a magistrate just yet. But the episode gets you thinking, how do you avoid ending up in court here? Because Babylonian courts are not for the faint-hearted. Here's what you learn from watching, listening, and surviving. Never touch property that isn't yours. That includes carts, livestock, amulets, tools, and even someone's shadow if they're noble and superstitious. Witnesses are everything. No signature. You better have at least 2 people ready to swear under oath that yes, the grain was agreed to be dry, and no, you didn't mean moist barley as a compliment. Oaths matter. Saying, "I swear by Marduk," is binding. Breaking it means invoking divine punishment, and that's not metaphorical. If you lie under oath, people fully expect your house to collapse, your children to grow horns, or your beard to fall out. Penalties are creative. There's a hierarchy. Nobles get bigger fines. Slaves get corporal punishment. Builders whose houses collapse face death unless they flee fast enough. And if a judge's ruling is proven false, he's fined too. There's accountability baked in like barley crust. You spend the rest of the day in study mode, watching how disputes are handled, how scribes prepare clay tablets for court sessions, how plaintiffs rehearse their stories with dramatic pauses and theatrical flourishes. At one point, a woman storms into the public square with a broken pot, screams, "He sold me fake sesame," and everyone turns toward the oil merchant like it's the season finale. You half expect someone to bring snacks. But then it gets real. A man in chains is dragged through the crowd flanked by 2 guards. He's bruised but not bloody. He's placed in front of a small stone bench, the kind used for minor cases. A scribe reads out charges: theft, not of grain or gold, but of a prayer tablet, sacred text, possibly magical. The crowd goes silent. The punishment, if he confesses and returns it, 10 days labor digging irrigation trenches. If he lies, public whipping, banishment, and possibly something involving salt and a temple goat. You don't stay long enough to find out. Later that night by the canal, you meet a potter's apprentice who tells you the safest way to avoid court is to be boring. Don't get married too quickly, he says. Don't trade with priests. And if someone asks you to hold their wine jug, run. You laugh. He doesn't. Before bed, you whisper a quick prayer, not just to Marduk but to Hammurabi himself. May his laws stay on tablets and far away from your life. And may your borrowed name never appear on the wrong end of one. You wake to the bleating of a goat with boundary issues. Its head is inside a woven basket investigating someone's breakfast with the kind of cheerful entitlement only livestock can possess. You blink, sit up, and realize something wonderful. It's market day. The plaza is alive with shouting, laughter, smells both fragrant and aggressively agricultural. Baskets brim with garlic bulbs the size of fists, piles of dates, wheels of salt-dried fish, and enough onions to arm a small militia. And amidst it all, people are arguing over the price of everything like it's the most important war they'll ever fight. Today, you're going shopping, or more precisely, you're going to try not to get swindled out of your last shard of social credibility. First, some context. In Babylon, markets operate as the pulsing heart of the economy. No coins yet, The standard is barter or silver by weight. That means deals are often chaotic, colorful, and dependent on one key skill, haggling, which you do not yet possess. Your goal today is simple: acquire something, anything edible or useful without offending a vendor's ancestors, accidentally agreeing to buy their entire goat herd, being traded yourself. You start small. A fig seller offers you a basket, still warm from the morning sun. You smile, gesture at the figs, and hold up 3 fingers. She laughs and replies with 5. You nod sagely and say, "May the gods sweeten your fruit." She grins, hands you 4 figs, and mutters something about village accents. Success. Emboldened, you move to the fabric stalls. You need a belt. Your current one is actually a braided reed rope meant for tethering poultry. You find a strip of dyed cloth, soft but clearly reused. The vendor tells you it was once part of a priest's sash. You squint. Smells more like barley beer and regrets. You trade it for 2 of your figs. Then you spot it. A modest pen filled with scruffy animals. Goats, sheep, a donkey with 1 tooth, and infinite confidence. 2 men are mid-argument. You recognize one. It's the shouting sheep guy from the other day. You wisely steer clear. But behind them, a small, twitchy man offers you a low pist. He points to a caged animal, a goat, allegedly. "Only 3 shekels," he whispers, "trained, blessing from Ea." You tilt your head. The goat sneezes, one eye twitches. You say, "What does it do?" "Watches children, fends off evil, makes cheese." You nod solemnly and walk away quickly. Still, your interest is piqued. How do you buy a goat in Babylon? First, know this: livestock here isn't just food. It's currency, labor, and a form of status statement. Owning animals means you've got resources, or at least the ability to feed something other than yourself. That puts you a rung higher on the invisible social ladder. To buy a goat legally, you'd need a seller with proper ownership documents, clay tablets stamped with the names of witnesses, and, ideally, a temple scribe. A witness again, always a witness. A clean public transaction. Private trades can be accused of theft. But here's the twist: people cheat a lot. Some goats are stolen or swapped. Some are pregnant and suddenly become 2 goats, doubling the price post-sale. Others are sick, disguised with soot and optimism. So buyers learn to inspect. Teeth to age the goat. Hooves for disease. Tail posture, surprisingly good health indicator. Eyes must be symmetrical and non-demonic. You watch a few transactions. A woman barters her loom cloth for a lamb, throwing in a jar of pickled garlic to seal the deal. A scribe records it all, then adds a smiley-faced symbol for reasons unknown. You won't be buying a goat today, but you now know how to pretend you're shopping for one, which is a useful skill. Goat shopper is a respected identity, suggests stability, family plans, possibly access to milk. Before leaving, you see a man trying to trade a musical instrument, a lyre, for a single chicken. The vendor squints, tests the tuning, then offers half a chicken. The musician sighs and walks away playing a mournful tune. You toss him a fig. He nods in gratitude and changes the song to something livelier. By sunset, your tunic belt has been upgraded, your figs are mostly gone, and you've successfully avoided entering a legally binding goat contract. You're learning the rhythms of the market. The smile before the lie, the gesture that means, try harder, the pause that says, I'll give you a better deal if you just shut up and walk away. You didn't make a fortune today, but you weren't tricked, sold, or cursed, and in Babylon, that's as good as profit. Your hands are dusty, your sandals, which you finally acquired via a rather tense barter involving a fish and a poem, are stiff, and your brain still itches from yesterday's impromptu lesson on goat commerce. But today, you're hunting something else entirely, a job. Yes, you've been faking your way through scribe training, loitering near temples, and generally pretending to have purpose. But at some point, you'll need actual work, the kind that earns food, respect, and maybe, just maybe, a place to sleep that doesn't involve shooing chickens off your stomach at 3 a.m. So you start with a walk through the labor quarters. This is Babylon's version of a hiring hall, minus the signage and coffee. Instead, there are just people standing, leaning, shouting, waiting. Some sit on upside-down baskets with tools laid neatly beside them, chisels, picks, brooms, styluses. Others stand alone, arms crossed, eyes scanning. It's a live-action R-sum board. Jobs here fall into 4 loose categories. Temple work, if you've got divine connections or can fake them. Ritual sweeping, incense waving, food preparation for gods who prefer their offerings without fingerprints. Construction, building walls, hauling bricks, mixing bitumen under the supervision of someone who thinks yelling is a leadership style. Domestic service, if you're lucky enough to be taken into a household. Tasks include cleaning, grinding grain, telling your employer's wife her necklace is very celestial. Specialty trades, potters, smiths, weavers, brewers. You need skills or confidence, or both. You try the temples first. They're always hiring, right? At the temple of Ishtar, a priestess eyes you with mild disdain. You read hymns, she asks. Fluently, you say, in dreams. She frowns. You add, but I sweep very reverently. She chuckles. Try the kitchens. They need someone who understands onions. You nod solemnly. You do understand onions. The kitchen is chaos. Boiling pots, chanting acolytes, a boy crying because he dropped lentils on a sacred stove. A stern woman with arms like temple columns gives you a ladle and points at a cauldron. Stir clockwise or Ishtar gets angry, she says, and don't taste anything unless it winks at you. You last 20 minutes. The pot is volcanic, your arm goes numb, and a priest yells because you stirred with the wrong hand. You bow your way out, dignity simmering alongside the lentils. Next, construction. You find a foreman near the ziggurat yelling about bricks. He looks you up and down. You've got the arms of a poet, he says. Thank you, you reply. That's not a compliment. He hands you a basket of mud and tells you to run it up a ladder. You try. You drop it. It explodes on your foot like a sticky curse. You're fired, he says. You never even got hired. Back to square one. You linger near a weaver's stall, watching hands fly over looms like spiders hopped up on sesame paste. The patterns are intricate, the rhythm hypnotic. You compliment the work. The weaver grunts. You have soft fingers. Soft fingers ruin thread. Hard soul though, you offer. She laughs. That's something. Sit, learn. She shows you how to twist threads, how to tighten the warp without breaking it. You're terrible, but she lets you wind spools and carry dyed yarn. It's not work, not yet, but it's tolerated presence, and that's a step. As dusk falls, you meet a man selling firewood. He's missing 3 teeth and 1 sandal. You looking? He asks. For work, you reply. For anything, he shrugs. You help him carry wood for an hour. He gives you half a roasted onion. It's the best meal you've had all day. Historians still debate how rigid Babylonian labor classes were. Some argue people were stuck in whatever role they were born into. Others point to apprenticeships, mixed marriages, and temple rotations as signs of flexibility. What's clear is that skills matter, but relationships matter more. You end the day not with a job, but with 3 conversations that didn't end in shouting. A weaver who might let you come back, a cook who doesn't hate you, a man with wood and wisdom who says, you're not useless, you're just new. And in a city as old as Babylon, new is rare. By now, your identity is semi-legal, your sandals are semi-functional, and your daily tasks, though mostly unpaid, are semi-respected. You've learned to eat cautiously, bow politely, and avoid angry temple bulls. But there's one aspect of Babylonian life that still unnerves you: illness. Because here's the thing. In Babylon, getting sick isn't just a biological inconvenience, it's often considered a spiritual judgment, a celestial riddle, or the result of your neighbor's bad aura. So when you wake one morning with a sore throat and a mild headache, your mind races. Is it heat exhaustion? Undercooked lentils? A curse? Did you forget to thank a minor deity? You cough softly. A dog looks at you and walks away. Even that feels ominous. You shuffle toward the scribe quarter, hoping for advice. Your young scribe friend, who has adopted the voice of a know-it-all older sibling, despite being 3 inches shorter than you, listens to your symptoms and raises an eyebrow. You should see a IPU, he says. A what? An exorcist. They handle curses, fevers, spirit bites, dreams involving ducks, and anything that makes your skin smell like onions. You consider that for a moment. Is there a doctor? He squints. You mean they use herbs and stuff, less chanting, but more expensive. If you can't afford oils, just go get smoked. Smoked? Later that day, you find yourself in a small room off a temple courtyard, surrounded by hanging reeds, painted clay figurines, and a faint smell of moldy cinnamon. This is the domain of a local IPU, a ritual healer, part priest, part wizard, part dramatist. He wears layered robes and holds a bundle of tamarisk branches. He circles you, mutters incantations, then gently taps your shoulders with the leaves. Bad wind, he concludes. Maybe river demon, maybe angry ancestor. You swallow a lot of heat. You want to argue, but he pulls out a small tablet and begins inscribing a diagnosis charm. You catch a few words: head pain, sleep whisper, and soul shadow. He lights incense, wafts it toward your chest, spits politely into a dish of barley. The barley floats. This is apparently good. He recommends 3 treatments. Drink a broth of crushed licorice root, onion skin, and honey. Sleep with a protective amulet under your tongue. Bathe in river water after reciting a hymn to Ea, god of wisdom and healing. You nod, trying not to sneeze into the incense. Afterward, you visit a local the other kind of healer, the practical one. He's a quieter man with a collection of ceramic jars and a deeply suspicious chicken. He offers a paste made from crushed figs, mustard seeds, and wine residue. For fever, he says, also makes you vomit. This is a feature. You ask about the onion skin broth. He rolls his eyes. That's for spirit cough. You probably just need water and rest, and fewer figs. You realize something. The 2 healers are part of a whole system: ritual and remedy, spirit and science. One treats the invisible causes, the other the physical effects. Sometimes people visit both and hedge their bets with prayer and poultices. Historians have found hundreds of tablets detailing Babylonian medicine, some astonishingly advanced. They describe symptoms, recipes, and procedures. They knew how to set bones, clean wounds, even perform rudimentary surgeries. But they also believed diseases had moral or magical roots. You don't catch a cold. You invite it spiritually. You try both approaches. You drink the paste. You recite the hymn poorly. You sleep with a small clay amulet shaped like a lion's paw under your tunic. By morning, your throat feels better. Was it the fig paste, the hymn, the placebo effect of ancient theatrics? You'll never know. But that's Babylon for you, where science wears a robe and magic smells like overcooked leeks. As you return to your regular haunts, someone notices your lion paw charm and asks if you've been touched by the bad moon. You say yes. He nods respectfully. So now you're not just a junior scribe in training with Weaver connections. You're a survivor of mysterious illness. This grants you a strange sort of street cred. People step a little farther away when you cough, but they also treat you with a dash of awe. And just like that, your legend grows. You've healed from your mysterious fever, acquired the respect of one suspicious chicken, and firmly earned the title of that odd scribe who smells faintly of roasted garlic and lion amulets. Now it's time to explore the best part of Babylonian life: leisure. Yes, even in a city where bricks melt at noon and curses fly faster than gossip, people still find time to party. And in Babylon, parties don't mean plastic cups and half-hearted dancing. They mean music, beer, and full-throttle ritual storytelling while someone plays a drum shaped like a melon. It starts with a whisper on the street. "Feast at the temple of Nabu tonight," says a girl selling pomegranate seeds. "Bring oil and don't wear brown." You have no oil, but you do have a tunic that's almost not brown and a vague ability to mimic reverence. Close enough. By twilight, the temple courtyard glows. Lanterns flicker from balconies. Musicians tune lutes and lyres beside incense braziers that smell of cedar and citrus. The crowd flows in like honey, slow and buzzing. Some wear elaborate robes. Others have garlands in their hair. Everyone's brought something, offerings for the god, or simply food for the feast table. You, after much internal debate, bring a bundle of woven reeds. It's humble. It's thematic. It was lying near a goat pen, but let's not dwell. The feast begins not with food, but with a hymn. A woman with silver thread in her hair stands atop a small platform and begins to chant. Her voice is low and smooth, curling into the crowd like a river. She sings of the birth of stars, of storms trapped in jars, of gods who ride lions and throw lightning like gossip. Everyone listens, even the children are quiet. Then the music starts. Drums thump, lutes pluck. A man in golden cuffs stands up and shouts, "To Nabu, who writes the fates with fingers of flame." The crowd cheers. Someone throws flowers. You nearly sneeze. The beer arrives next, in enormous clay jugs shaped like animals. One has a ram's head, another a turtle. The beer is cloudy, slightly sour, and served with straws to avoid the sediment. Yes, the Babylonians invented beer straws. You sip cautiously and discover it tastes like fermented bread, but somehow refreshing. Then the real joy, dancing. Not the stiff, awkward swaying you expect. Babylonian dancing is storytelling. A group forms a circle. A drummer beats a fast rhythm. People take turns entering the ring and miming gods, animals, historical events. You see a man perform the cow that kicked the moon. A woman mimes the moment Inanna slapped a demon. A child does a surprisingly accurate impression of a barley harvest. You're encouraged, dragged really into the circle. You panic. What do you perform? You choose the goat who escaped judgment. You crouch, bleat, spin in dramatic confusion, then bow. There's a pause. Then someone claps. Then another. Then everyone. You survive the dance. You may have invented Babylonian comedy theater. Later people eat. Dates stuffed with nuts, onions roasted with honey, fish wrapped in fig leaves. The air is thick with spices, cumin, coriander, mint. You eat until you can't feel your belt. You drink until your shoulders relax. You laugh like you belong. And all around you, the city breathes joy. Historians often focus on Babylon's architecture, laws, and wars, but its people, they knew how to celebrate. They sang epics from memory. They drank beer brewed in family kilns. They built instruments from turtle shells and bullhorns. Music and feasting weren't rare events, they were ritual obligations. Gods needed celebration, so did humans. You fall asleep that night in the shadow of a temple column, a wreath of reeds still around your neck, the taste of sweet onion still on your tongue. Someone plays a slow tune on a lyre nearby. The stars blur slightly. You smile. You didn't just survive Babylon today. You danced with it. Your head is throbbing. Your tongue feels like it's been used to mop a grain silo, and a faint outline of a turtle-shaped beer jug is imprinted on your cheek. You blink blearily at the morning light and quickly regret it. The aftermath of a Babylonian feast is no joke. You sit up slowly beneath the temple column where you apparently collapsed last night, still wreathed in partially chewed mint leaves and one sandal short of dignity. People step over you casually, as if this is not the first time someone has woken up on sacred ground, wondering why they taste cumin. Time to move, because here's the thing. Last night's joy was beautiful, but this morning's hangover comes with a different kind of danger. You hear it in the tone of a passing temple servant. "Careful," she mutters to a friend, nodding toward a nearby alley. "He walked into the sacred perimeter. They haven't stopped chanting since." You blink. Sacred perimeter? You stand, stretch, and turn slowly, careful not to upset your stomach, and spot a small group of priests and guards gathered near the rear of the temple. They're circling something, a roped-off area. There are markings on the ground, ashes, red ochre, maybe crushed flowers. Two boys trying to impress one another step too close and are immediately hissed at by a man holding a very serious broom. You edge closer, careful to stay on the safe side of everything. The sacred perimeter is real and invisible to the untrained eye. It's the space around temples, altars, statues, and even certain streets during holy days, zones that are set apart. Crossing into one uninvited is a big deal. Not always a death sentence, but definitely a social death, and possibly a bath in weird oils under priestly supervision. You watch as a man tries to explain to the guards that he was just looking for his sandal. One priest examines his feet, frowns, and asks, "And your sandal walked into the sanctum alone?" The man is escorted away, politely, sort of. In Babylon, space has meaning. Geography isn't just physical, it's spiritual. The city is a patchwork of zones, public, private, sacred, and secret. Some areas look ordinary, but are legally divine. Some are open to all by day, but forbidden at night, and no one's putting up signs. You start to remember strange little things from your first few days. A man bowing before passing a doorway. A child warned not to touch a wall. A basket of fruit placed in front of a random rock. You realize now, those were boundaries, markers of spaces where gods, spirits, or ancient laws hold sway, and you've probably been skipping through them like a happy goat at a thunderstorm picnic. So time to learn the rules. How to spot a sacred space in Babylon. Look for ashes or flowers sprinkled in a line, invisible fences. Listen for chanting. If someone is singing slowly and solemnly, walk the other way. Watch where people walk. If a whole crowd detours around a specific spot, so should you. Check the shadows. Some statues are not to be looked at directly during sunrise or sunset. Avoid anything with a bird carved into it, especially owls or eagles. Those belong to gods who are not known for patience. You also learn that accidental transgressions can be forgiven, but they must be followed by ritual cleansing. A short list of purification options includes smearing your forehead with river clay, bathing while reciting a hymn backwards, offering a handful of dates to the offended deity, letting a priest shake a rattle over your head until you forget what you did wrong. You try not to ask questions. By midday, you've heard of 2 other incidents. One man sat on a blessed bench used by visiting priests and now has to fast for 3 days. Another child threw a fig into a sacred fountain and was allegedly struck by a dream of a crocodile with a human face. His parents now sleep with a clay turtle under each bedpost. You reflect on all the modern habits you've had to unlearn. Sitting on steps, whistling idly, leaning against walls, picking up shiny things without asking, saying "nice statue" within hearing distance of one. Each of those could potentially land you in a ritual you didn't ask for. That evening, you pass by the temple again and see the chanting has stopped. The rope is gone. The space is normal again, but only because someone re-sanctified it. You bow your head respectfully, whisper an apology just in case, and continue walking. The lesson: in Babylon, survival isn't just about eating or obeying laws. It's about sensing the spaces between things, knowing when to pause, when to bow, and when to pretend the statue never blinked at you. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is walk through the wrong shadow. You've started keeping a list in your head, not of Babylon's gods or streets or spice vendors who won't overcharge you for leeks, but of things that should never be taken for granted in any time period. Near the top, right between P and a reliable roof, you've added neighbors who don't keep wild predators. Because today, you wake to the sound of roaring. Not the soft braying of donkeys or the wheezy complaints of an overworked ox. No, this is something deep, guttural, and entirely too confident. You stumble out of your sleeping spot, a cozy alcove behind a bread stall, and find your fellow Eastgate Whisper residents standing very still. There, calmly sitting in front of a doorway like it owns the building, is a lion. Yes, a lion. Its mane is matted with dust. It yawns, revealing a pink tongue the size of a scarf. And beside it, emerging from the doorway with absolutely zero urgency, is a man in a blue robe and sandals that whisper of privilege. He carries a bowl of meat. The lion perks up. You whisper to the nearest onlooker, "That's a lion." "Yes," she replies. "And no one's running." "No," she says, "it's trained." You blink. "Who trains lions?" She shrugs. "Priests, kings, slightly insane nobles. It's Babylon." She's right. Lions in ancient Mesopotamia weren't just mythical symbols. They were real, respected, and extremely complicated to own. They symbolized power, divine authority, and the kind of person who could afford to feed a 300-pound carnivore in a city where most people trade old sandals for lentils. You watch as the lion finishes its snack, licks its paws, and then, horrifyingly, curls up like a house cat. The man pats its flank and says, "This one's gentle, mostly." Mostly. Later, you ask around. The story emerges slowly. This man is a minor priest of Ishtar, once assigned to the outer provinces. He returned recently, bringing gifts for the temple, a lion among them. And now, the lion roams freely around his home during festivals and feast days. Is it legal? Technically, yes. Babylon has laws about animal ownership mostly concerning oxen and goats, but exotic pets fall into a divine gray zone. If the lion is declared sacred, and it doesn't maul anyone important, no one questions it too hard. You're still rattled. You ask your scribe friend how common this is. "More than you think," he says. "The king hunts lions for sport. The temples sometimes keep them as protectors. Nobles use them to prove they're blessed by gods. Once I saw a merchant parade a leopard through the market in a gold leash. It bit 3 people and stole a fish." He pauses. "It was a very good fish." You try to process this. See, you'd been picturing Babylonian life as dusty scrolls, sacred hymns, and mildly suspicious beer. But it's also roaming apex predators treated like mascots. You become hyper-aware of animal sounds. That growl, is it a dog, or another gentle lion? You walk past a rooftop and spot what might be a panther tethered beside a laundry line. You step into a courtyard to hear parrots reciting prayers in what sounds suspiciously like passive-aggressive Akkadian. Historians still debate how domesticated these creatures really were. Some records suggest lions were raised from cubs, trained for rituals, or even kept as gifts for visiting dignitaries. Others hint at more theatrical uses, such as ceremonial hunts, where the outcome was scripted but the claws were very real. And of course, there's the symbolism. Lions represent kingship, divine favor, masculine strength. Ishtar, goddess of love and war, rides one. Marduk fights them. Having one nearby is a power move and also a security risk. But Babylon thrives on tension. Divine versus human, law versus chaos, lion versus doorframe. By evening, the lion is gone, probably napping in a private shrine, dreaming of slow-moving goats. You, meanwhile, now walk a little differently, slower, eyes up, ears alert. You find yourself peeking around corners before entering alleys, scanning rooftops for suspiciously large cats. Because it's one thing to survive Babylon's laws, heat, and hieroglyphic menus. It's another to survive your neighbor's lion. The air tonight is thicker than usual, humming with sound, scent, and something else you can't quite name. You can feel it in your skin, like a prelude. Babylon is gearing up for something. You hear drums. You see garlands being strung across alleyways. Someone paints symbols on a stone column with red clay and mutters a blessing as they work. You ask your scribe friend what's happening. He glances up from his tablet and says, "It's the festival of the dead. You should stay out of the square after sundown." You blink. Dead as in ancestors? Dead as in everyone. It's remembrance season. They call the spirits back so they'll stop bothering the living. Lovely. As dusk falls, the city transforms. Torches line the main roads. Small fires burn in front of doorways. People scatter crushed barley and ash to welcome the departed, soft paths for soft feet. Children run around with bells to wake the sleepers. You now understand why you saw someone carving a turnip earlier. It was apparently meant to house a wandering soul for the night. This festival is no somber affair. There's music, yes, but it's minor key, trance-like. Drums, flutes, and a deep horn that sounds like the sky itself is sighing. Offerings of food are placed outside, boiled eggs, honey cakes, dried fish. The smell is rich, clinging to everything. Some families leave wine, others leave water mixed with crushed flowers. But it's the rituals that draw your eye. In the center square, a priest in a lion skin cloak leads a procession. His face is covered in soot, his voice a chant, repetitive, rhythmic, thick with vowels that don't quite match your borrowed language. Behind him, people carry effigies of the departed. Not statues, bundles, carefully wrapped with scraps of fabric, buttons, bits of hair, rings, or clay charms, personal items. It's like watching grief turned into sculpture. Then comes the part that tightens your chest. A shallow pit is dug in the square, and each effigy is placed gently inside, not buried, just laid down as if napping. A circle of reeds is placed around the rim, and a slow spiral of incense is lit. Smoke rises, people chant names. And the whole time, no one cries. You realize, this isn't about mourning, it's about appeasement. The dead must be acknowledged, praised, even fed. If they're ignored, they get cranky. And cranky ghosts in Babylon are not passive-aggressive. They ruin your crops. They give you boils. They whisper bad advice during legal proceedings. You keep your distance, but an old woman catches your eye and beckons. She presses a scrap of cloth into your hand. "Someone forgotten," she says. "Say the name, any name." You hold the cloth awkwardly and whisper the name of your old history teacher from high school. The woman nods approvingly. He'll sleep better now. You are too afraid to ask how she knows he's dead. Historians know the Babylonians had extensive rituals for the dead, and not just kings. Commoners left food and drink for ancestors. They hired mourners. They performed special incantations to stop restless spirits, the etamu, from rising uninvited. And if someone died violently or without burial, they required extra ceremonies. Sometimes even a substitute body, built from straw and clay, to trick the underworld into granting rest. One scribe once documented a haunting where the spirit only left after someone baked it a cake shaped like a boat. You don't know what's more touching, the haunting or the cake effort. Tonight, You sit on a step and watch flickering lights bounce across brick walls. Shadows twist. Faces appear and vanish in firelight. You swear you see someone from your first week here, a vendor who vanished without a trace. She smiles at you through the smoke, then blinks away. The air chills. Someone begins a dance, slow, spiraling, arms raised. Others join in, not joyous, not mournful, just ritual. You don't participate, you simply watch, and for the first time in Babylon, you feel small, like a visitor inside a city of layers, living stacked on dead, rituals stacked on routine, songs stitched into silence. Eventually, the fires die down. The effigies are gathered up again, this time burned in a small clay furnace. The ashes are spread at crossroads where, according to tradition, spirits wander before returning to the underworld. You walk home quietly. No one talks much after the festival. Even the dogs seem to know tonight isn't for barking. Before you sleep, you set the cloth scrap beside your head, whispering thanks to whatever soul it represents, and you think, not for the first time, that this city remembers everything, the living, the dead, and even the stories in between. You rise early the next morning, the scent of last night's incense still clinging to your tunic. The city feels hushed, reverent, but there's also an underlying buzz, a subtle shift in pace, like the beginning of a storm that's forgotten its own script. Because tonight isn't about spirits, or lions, or celestial goat negotiations. Tonight is tax night. You only learn this through a chance conversation with a man repairing a sandal strap using what appears to be a fishbone needle. Better eat well today, he says, eyes on his work. Taxes are due. They come after sunset like ghosts with scrolls. You blink. Who comes? He glances up. Collectors, temple scribes, runners with tablets and lists. Pray your name isn't on one. You walk faster. See, Babylon's economy runs not just on silver and barley, but on obligation. Every citizen, worker, vendor, even some visiting relatives is expected to contribute. Not just money, often goods, labor, grain, animals, or even song if you're lucky and irritatingly talented. As the day warms, you notice signs. Market stalls close early. Scribes with serious eyebrows roll out lists in front of neighborhood leaders. Several sheep disappear mysteriously behind a temple wall. Someone whitewashes their doorway, muttering, "They'll think I moved." You seek out your scribe friend. He's unusually quiet, focused on preparing tax records on soft clay tablets. "It's not bad," he says, "if your name is clear. If not," he shrugs, "there's always trench work." You peer over his shoulder. The tablets list quantities. 14 measures of barley from Nab Nasir, 1 goat due from Enlil Malik, 6 jars of beer from household of Ida Nanerta. You spot your name, or rather, your borrowed identity. Nab Nasir, Eastgate Quarter, the line reads, 1 week of labor pending. You feel cold. Because Babylon doesn't just demand taxes, it enforces them. And your contribution? Apparently, a week of public trench clearing. You ask what that involves. "Early mornings," he replies, "mud, sore arms, shouting, occasionally snakes." You nod slowly. That evening, as the sun slinks behind the rooftops and the air thickens with the collective tension of 10,000 taxpayers, the collectors arrive. They move quietly, young men in linen robes, marked with seal rings, and carrying styluses like spears. They stop at each home, consult their tablet, and either nod and move on or pause to tap on the door. That tap means you forgot. That tap means trouble. You hide your sandals, just in case they're considered taxable. Your door, well, your sleeping corner is skipped, not because you're invisible, but because your pending line gives you a brief reprieve. You'll be summoned soon enough. But your neighbors aren't so lucky. One man is pulled aside. Too many debts, not enough goats. He argues. They counter. Eventually, he hands over a brass cooking pot and a string of dried fish. The collector inscribes a mark. The man walks away, shoulders tight. A woman tries to trade a song, a hymn she composed for Ishtar. It's long, emotional, involves dancing. The scribe actually listens, then says half credit. A boy offers a poem. The collector smiles and gives him a jar of water. You don't know if that's payment or charity. Historians have uncovered thousands of tax tablets from Babylon, evidence of a deeply organized, often merciless system. There were taxes for land, for livestock, for selling goods, for marrying, even for simply existing in certain districts. And if you couldn't pay, the penalties ranged from extra labor to losing property to, in rare cases, being conscripted for temple work, or worse. You sleep poorly that night. Not just because you know your trench summons is coming, but because you now understand that in Babylon nothing is truly free. Every step, every sip, every spoonful of lentil stew echoes with a question: have you given your share? And if not, the man with the scrolls will knock again. It's your first day digging a trench, and frankly, you would have preferred a plague. You were summoned just before dawn by a scribe with sharp handwriting and a sharper tone. "Nab Nasir," he said, scanning his clay tablet. 1 week, labor duty, water channel clearing, report to the Ziggurats Southern Basin. You arrived groggy, sandals still damp, and were promptly handed a shovel that looked older than time. Around you, other misfits, minor debtors, unlucky scribes, and one man who claimed he was volunteering for exercise. No one believed him. Trench duty, it turns out, is Babylon's default punishment and public service rolled into one. The water systems, canals, ditches, overflow channels, are lifelines for the city. They also clog, collapse, and in some cursed seasons, start growing things that hiss. So when the city needs help, it pulls from the unfortunates. You spend the morning knee-deep in clay, digging out a section of channel clogged with silt, broken pottery, and what might have once been a ceremonial loaf. The sun doesn't rise. It leaps into the sky and punches your neck repeatedly. The foreman is a wiry man named Ulgi, who refers to everyone as Mudfoot. He carries a reed whip that he hasn't used yet, but dangles dramatically. "Dig like you're cursed," he shouts. "Dig like a ghost is watching." Someone behind you mutters, "One is." No one laughs. By mid-morning, your arms ache. You've developed a cough composed entirely of dust and shame, but you also start noticing something. The system is weirdly efficient. Each worker has a zone. Every few hours, someone walks by handing out salted cucumbers and warm beer, hydration, Babylon style. A rotating pair of scribes record progress, marking each meter of cleared trench on clay. If you hit a particularly stubborn tree root, you get praise units. No one knows what those are worth, but Ulgi shouts your name slightly less when you earn one. You're paired with a woman named Taramat. She's sharp-eyed, foul-mouthed, and very good at finding ancient coins in the muck. If you find one, she says, you keep it. If it screams, you return it. You don't ask her to clarify. As you dig, she explains the unofficial trench rules. If it smells like fish and wine, it's probably a temple drain. If it smells like garlic and fear, stop digging. Never ever break a sealed pot. It's either cursed or tax-related, and either way, someone will cry. By late afternoon, you hit clay that smells strangely sweet. You pause. Taramat leans over, sniffs, and says, "Old bread pit, leave it." You don't argue. You realize something strange. You're starting to enjoy it. The rhythm, the jokes, the camaraderie born of mutual suffering and shared sunburn. For the first time, you're not passing or faking, you're simply part of the crew. Historians rarely celebrate Babylon's sanitation workers, but they should. These channels kept the city breathing. Without them, disease spread, crops withered. Even the great ziggurat relied on trench workers to keep the ritual waters flowing. At sunset, Ulji blows a horn carved from antelope bone. Work stops. Everyone slumps against the trench walls, gulping beer and muttering prayers to their knees. You dig okay, Teramat says. Thanks, you croak. Come tomorrow, bring better sandals. You nod, you will. That night you sleep near the canal, arms sore, body caked in a layer of Babylon's finest dirt. But your chest feels light. You earned your place today, not with clever words or divine flattery, but with a shovel and sweat. And weirdly, it feels good. You're no longer a trench rookie. By the fourth day, you've earned 2 blisters, 3 mysterious bruises, and an unofficial nickname, Ribe Mudbelly, courtesy of Teramat after you fell face first into a particularly ambitious puddle. You've also learned how to sling a shovel like a champion, and curse like a priest stubbing his toe mid-him.cc. But today, as you gather your strength for another shift of ditch diplomacy, a messenger arrives. A boy, skinny as a breadstick, bearing a clay tablet wrapped in oilcloth. He squints at your face, squints at the tablet, shrugs and hands it over. You unroll it with dirty fingers. The message is brief. Report to House of Ink, new assignment, scribble. You blink. You've been promoted? Teramat smirks as you read. Told you they'd figure out your arms were too soft for shovel work. Jealous, you reply. She throws a cucumber at your head. It's a compliment. You clean up as best you can, read, dunk your head in a basin and pray for divine deodorant, and make your way to the House of Ink, a modest but bustling building tucked beside the Temple of Nabu. Inside, scribes bend over tablets like worshippers, their styluses twitching like insect legs. It smells like clay dust, reed oil, and ambition. A senior scribe in a deep blue robe greets you without looking up. Nab Nasir? Yes. You have decent clay discipline. Your tablet margins are legible. You've been reassigned. To what, you ask? To storytelling. You blink, as in making things up. As in recording events, reading omens, composing official poems. We need someone who can spell celestial without invoking livestock. You bow, trying not to let your joy show. This new role takes you deep into the cultural bloodstream of Babylon. You're now part of the temple's public storytelling team, the people who preserve epics, record omens, and occasionally ghostwrite for nobles who want to be remembered with better hair. Your tasks are varied. Copying chunks of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the city's favorite tearjerker. Translating recent events into verse, including the recent tax dispute involving runaway chickens. Drafting hymns to Ishtar that are emotional but not too needy. Updating the festival calendar. A long clay tablet listing who's celebrating what and which gods get fruit. And once a week, you perform. Not on a stage, on a stone platform in the scribe courtyard, beneath a canopy strung with reeds and dried dates. An audience gathers, you clear your throat, a flute plays softly, you read. Sometimes you narrate wars from 200 years ago as if they just happened. Sometimes you recount dreams submitted by the public and interpret them with poetic flair. The fish in your teeth, a sign of rebirth or poor hygiene. People listen. They laugh. They nod. A priestess wipes away a tear during your retelling of the goat who missed the boat. You realize something. Stories matter here. In Babylon, truth and tale intertwine. Myths are not distractions, they're infrastructure. They hold society together. They explain floods, justify kings, remind people to say their prayers and eat their lentils. Historians debate how literal these stories were meant to be. Were gods believed in as physical beings? Were omens interpreted sincerely or strategically? The answer is yes, and no, and sometimes, depends on the moon. But what's clear is this: those who shape the stories shape the city. You now walk a little taller. You carry a stylus like a dagger. You polish your metaphors. You invent a new proverb. Even a donkey dreams of flying when the tablet is smooth. No one questions it. At night, you sit under the stars and scribble in the dust, knowing your words might echo across clay for years, or at least until someone recycles the tablet to track goat manure again. Still, it counts. You've become the kind of person people nod to in passing. The kind of person who can say, "I'll revise the hymn after lunch," and not be questioned. The kind of person who, tragically, should have known better than to touch the statue. Let's rewind. It starts as a quiet afternoon, the kind with warm breezes, buzzing flies, and low conversations over barley porridge. You're in the inner courtyard of the Temple of Ishtar, waiting for a priestess to approve your latest hymn draft. It's a rousing little number about rain, fertility, and something poetic involving pomegranates. While you wait, you wander. Not far, just around the perimeter, where old statues line the wall like divine bouncers. Most are chipped, their faces smoothed by time and too many reverent fingers. But one catches your eye, a small basalt figure, less than waist high, arms folded, eyes wide, mouth neutral, no name, no plaque. Just a single reed mat placed carefully beneath it. It looks forgotten. It looks dusty. It looks like it could use a friendly pat. So you pat it. Immediately, 3 things happen. A pigeon screams. A nearby priest gasps like you slapped his mother. Someone rings a bell that absolutely wasn't for lunch. You freeze. The priest approaches. He's not shouting, but that's worse. He's whispering, "Do you know what you've done?" You want to say no, but honesty feels unwise, so instead you ask, "Is this about the pat?" It is, very much so. That statue, as it turns out, is not forgotten. It's deeply sacred, an avatar of a minor but easily insulted underworld deity, Dumuzi's cousin maybe, depending on which family line you believe. The mat, a protective boundary. The statue, only to be touched during funerals and goat-born eclipses. Touching it, even kindly, requires purification. And so begins your journey into Babylonian spiritual decontamination. First stop, the incense pit. You stand in a circle of smoldering myrrh while 2 acolytes chant a prayer that, near as you can tell, translates to "Please forgive this idiot." Second, a water rite. You kneel by a sacred basin while a priest pours ladles of scented water over your head. It's cool, fragrant, and deeply humiliating. Nearby temple workers pretend not to watch. They fail. Third, a gift offering. You must provide something of value to reaffirm your reverence. You offer the half-finished hymn. They accept barely. And finally, a whispered apology to the statue. You crouch, hands clasped, and mutter your most sincere regrets to a basalt face that is almost certainly judging you. It doesn't respond, but the pigeon returns and lands nearby. That feels symbolic, probably. Historians have long debated the exact roles of statues in Babylonian ritual. Some were symbolic. Others were seen as literal vessels for divine presence, especially during festivals or after complex mouth-opening ceremonies. Either way, they were not decor. Touching one without cause could be seen as theft, disrespect, or worse, spiritual interference. Later, your scribe friend finds you drying your hair with your own sleeve. He laughs. "You patted a statue?" "I thought it was lonely." "It's a god." "So am I before breakfast." He claps you on the back. "Well, at least you're clean now, spiritually." You spend the rest of the day rewriting the hymn to include an awkward but heartfelt stanza about the wisdom of never touching anything in a temple, unless you're told to 3 times, and maybe blindfolded. You include a metaphor about goats and forgiveness. The priestess approves it. That night, you pass the courtyard again. The statue sits unchanged, but someone has placed a single fig at its feet, a peace offering. You nod respectfully and keep your hands to yourself. Because in Babylon, survival doesn't just mean knowing the laws or the markets. It means knowing when not to be curious. The sky today is the color of old copper, bruised and hazy. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, a donkey brays in what can only be described as minor key despair. You take this as a sign that you need to leave the city. Not permanently, just a break, a breath of air that doesn't carry 50 varieties of incense and 40 more of human effort. You mention the idea casually to your scribe friend. You're thinking of leaving the walls, he says, eyes wide. You know the countryside has bugs, right? I'll take my chances, you reply. He shrugs. Then take the canal path, but don't use the west gate. The toll collector there is in mourning and charging double. Noted. You set out at dawn with a borrowed satchel, a flask of beer you've learned, and a handful of dried dates. The guards at the south gate glance at your stylus, your sandals, your frankly unconvincing cloak, and wave you through. Apparently, no one suspects a scribe would voluntarily enter the countryside without being paid or pursued. The world beyond the city walls is vast. Flat fields shimmer in the heat, divided by irrigation ditches and reed fences. Clusters of farmsteads dot the horizon, each with its own lean-to-shade barking dog and flustered-looking goats. In the distance, a shepherd whistles a tune as old as clay itself. You walk. At first, it's peaceful. The breeze carries the scent of sweet grass and damp earth. You pass groves of date palms, fields of barley, and canals humming with frogs and something that might be crocodiles. You try not to think about it. But then comes a problem you hadn't anticipated. You're very obviously a city person. You nod politely to a farmer and say, "Nice barley plot." He blinks. It's emmer wheat. You gesture at a goat and ask, "Male or female?" He squints. It's a sheep. Worse still, you forget to bow before entering a village. The local children throw pebbles until an old woman gives you a reed to wave as a sign of apology. She also insists you eat something, a terrifyingly spicy onion stew that clears your sinuses and possibly your ancestors. You recover in the shade of a fig tree. The woman sits beside you, weaving rope from dried date fibers. She tells you stories of rain spirits, of mud demons, of a cousin who once saw a fish with a man's face. "Don't laugh," she says. "The river remembers everything." You believe her. You stay the night in a grain barn, trading a short poem in exchange for lodging. It's a strange system, but out here, stories count as currency too. People live by the land, yes, but also by myth, gossip, and the weather's moods. Historians often describe Babylon's countryside as poor, rugged, less civilized. But here's what they miss. It's rich in rhythm. Work at sunrise, nap at midday, tell tales at night. You hear about gods who walk the fields in disguise, about tax agents who turn into owls, about the shepherd who married a cloud. No one questions the logic. In the morning, you help dig a shallow trench just for show, and earn a fried flatbread the size of your head. It's divine. When you finally head back to the city, your skin is darker, your shoulders sore, your heart oddly full. You carry a reed amulet, 2 new calluses, and a tiny clay doll gifted by a child who insisted it would keep your ink from running away. Back within the walls, Babylon feels louder, brighter, more urgent. But you walk differently now. Not like a foreigner learning to fake it, but like someone who knows what lies outside and chooses to return. And that, in Babylon, is the mark of a person who has survived not just the city, but themselves. The city greets you differently now. When you return through the gates, you're not a curiosity. You're a figure people vaguely recognize. A nod here, a wave there. Someone calls you goat poet. You're not even mad. But today brings a new kind of challenge, one you didn't expect, and one far more dangerous than trench work, lion neighbors, or statues with poor boundaries. Today, someone asks, have you ever thought about becoming king? You choke on your barley beer. Not because it's a serious offer, it's not. It's a joke. A jibe from a drunk scribe 3 cups deep into a debate about whether the moon goddess prefers figs or dates, but the idea lingers like bad perfume. Because technically, Babylon has had stranger rulers. You start asking questions, carefully. Turns out, kingship in Babylon isn't just about wearing shiny robes and shouting from balconies. It's about divine selection, political compromise, military backing, and a spectacular ability to survive public festivals without fainting. The king is both leader and servant, a figurehead and a priest. He mediates between gods and people, approves laws, oversees construction, and leads rituals, especially the intense and theatrical New Year festival, where he gets symbolically slapped by a high priest to remind him he's still mortal. You try to imagine that, wearing a crown, issuing edicts, getting publicly slapped for sacred balance. You're snapped out of this reverie by your scribe friend. You've got the ankles for kingship, he says. Thanks. But you'd last 2 days, max. Why? For starters, you ask too many questions, and you'd probably declare Fig Day a national holiday. You consider it. But still, what if? To be king in Babylon, you'd need lineage or military support, which you absolutely do not have. Temple approval? Maybe, assuming the statue you patted hasn't filed a complaint. Charisma? Okay, you can tell a good story. A proper wardrobe currently lacking, unless tunics with ink stains become fashionable. A scapegoat? Not metaphorical. There's literally a ritual goat who absorbs the king's bad omens and is then ceremonially released into the wilderness. The real kings of Babylon faced threats you wouldn't wish on your worst clay tablet: invasions, droughts, palace coups, ill-timed omens, astrologers with bad attitudes. They had to navigate alliances with priests, merchants, scribes, and at least 5 gods on any given day. They also had to fund public works, regulate grain prices, and attend ceremonial marriages to statues. One king even had to pretend to wed a river goddess every spring, symbolically ensuring the land would be fertile. No pressure. You learn about Hammurabi, the lawgiver, Nabonidus, the moon worshipper, Nebuchadnezzar, the builder, each left behind monuments, inscriptions, policies, and a few questionable construction projects that probably went over budget. You also learn about the fake kings, placeholders selected during eclipses or bad omens to absorb the celestial negativity before being retired. That's right. Sometimes the city picked a commoner, dressed him like royalty, let him rule symbolically for a few days, and then gently removed him from existence. You make a mental note: do not look too competent during eclipses. That night, you sit on a temple step, watching the stars. You think about what it means to rule, to lead, to be remembered, and you realize you don't want to be king. Kings have power, yes, but they also have targets on their backs, and ritual responsibilities that include awkward dream interpretations and pretending not to be terrified during storms. No, your gift is elsewhere, in ink, in stories, in making people laugh just enough to forget the heat. And maybe, in knowing when not to take the crown, even if someone drunkenly offers it over spilled beer. The sun is setting over Babylon in that particular golden hue it reserves for days when you've truly earned it. The rooftops are honey-colored. The canal reflects 1,000 shimmering fish-scale ripples. Somewhere, a lyre plays a tune that's part lullaby, part prayer. And you're sitting on a soft woven mat surrounded by a few friends, scribes, traders, a reformed goat thief, and one sleep-deprived temple baker who insists the moon is trying to tell her secrets. You sip beer slowly, watching the city soften as night falls. There's no rush, there never is now. You've survived. That realization comes not as a shout but a whisper. You survived Babylon, not as a king, not as a God-touched hero, but as something better. A person who adapted, who listened, learned, got mud in their hair, said the wrong thing, touched the wrong statue, dug the right trench, and somehow made it through. You've become part of the rhythm. In the morning, you'll wake and check the city board to see if the fish festival is still on. You might stop by the weaving quarter and help Taramat unpick a cursed hem, or you'll be asked to read a letter aloud to someone who can't decipher their nephew's messy handwriting. Or maybe the temple will need a new hymn, one with humor, heart, and exactly 2 mentions of onions. You're not exceptional here, but you are embedded. The city no longer treats you like a mystery to be solved. You've become the kind of person who has inside jokes with butchers, who knows when to duck during ritual incense tosses, who understands that sacred space isn't always marked in clay, it's sometimes just the quiet between footsteps. And tonight, as you rise to head home, you pass that statue again, the one you patted. Someone's placed a garland around its neck. You bow. The pigeon coos. You walk past the temple, past the ziggurat that still glows faintly with offerings, past sleeping courtyards and soot-darkened walls, and finally, past a child telling his younger brother about the time the scribe danced like a goat and made the whole street laugh. You smile. Let them remember you that way. Not as a time traveler or an outsider, but as a scribe who stayed. Because in a city that's always rebuilding itself in bricks, in songs, in whispered names of the dead, the greatest honor is not survival alone, it's belonging.